Chapter 4. Expansion months went by after the incident with Kev and Militech. As time moved on, I began noticing that I could tune in to electrical frequencies to follow their currents. As I worked with different kinds of technology, I realized that I could interact with them without any kind of implant. I did have to touch a single screen, flip switches, or push buttons. I could simply make the machine do whatever I wanted it to do as if it were an expansion of myself. My range wasn't very far at the moment, a few yards at best, but it allowed me to work faster in the shop. I took a week off from work to make the excuse that I was getting an implant. Typically, you weren't allowed to get implants before the age of 18, but Ripper docs aren't exactly known for their law-abiding natures. The only thing they concerned themselves with was keeping their licenses. This allowed me to push the fiction that I was using my implants to interact with the different machines. I was commended for the efficiency that my implants allowed me to achieve. I also took my savings and hired the Maelstrom gang to find and appropriate a number of pieces of braindance technology. Typically, I would want to avoid those psychopaths, but when it came to finding the best of the best tech, Maelstrom was second to none. Also, their ability to push the limits of implants was impressive. While it was difficult to judge what any individual Maelstrom member might do at any given time, they were pretty dependable when it came to business. Altogether, they scored a braindance recorder, player, a neural interface, sensory suite, and editing software that one would expect from a Kang Tao production. They also surprised me with some Cortex bombs as a bonus. The whole deal cost me some solid credits, but I was able to trade some vehicle repairs to have them teach me how to set the whole thing up. It was an excellent learning experience since setting up the braindance tech was completely different from other types of technology I'd learned to work with before. I spent the next few months practicing with the recorders and editing software until I was satisfied that I was proficient with it. After that, I began recording my memories from my time in Thedas and the Wasteland. I'm not sure why, but I was able to recall every day with perfect clarity, which made thinking about Farron even more painful. I recorded and edited 25 years of literal daily content from Thedas. Every single day from my birth to the day I was crowned as Empress was turned into a braindance for people to immerse themselves in. I did the same thing for my time in the Wasteland. I contacted the Dino Company to distribute the braindances under the titles Merida'sIsekaiAdventures. The series was surprisingly popular. People thought I had created simulations that were acted out, then edited over with AI fantasy elements, but still seemed like realistic memories. The series were so popular in Night City that Dino worked with the media company to distribute the Merida'sIsekaiAdventures on a national level. The money coming in from the braindances was enough that it allowed me to move forward with other plans that I had. I went to the Corporate Registration Bureau and took days to go over and fill out all the necessary paperwork for a new corporation I named Oradoom. The process was involved. After the paperwork was filed, I had to go through multiple meetings with the Corporate Registration Bureau to go over regulatory laws. When I received my licenses and official paperwork that established the corporation, I began to request paperwork on the landowners and stakeholders for Rocky Ridge, as well as the area that was used as a giant landfill. Unfortunately for me, one of the primary stakeholders in both areas was Arasaka. They weren't exactly in the business of giving up their assets. However, in the case of both pieces of property, Arasaka and other stakeholders had given up the land for years and hadn't been bothering with the property taxes. Granted, they could pay the arrears and the penalties owed to the city, and the amount wouldn't even be considered a rounding error in their books. I set up a meeting with Arasaka, but being a newly formed corporation, I didn't expect to meet with anyone too important. I sat on a comfortable couch with a cup of hot tea as I waited for whichever corporate rep I had to speak with to get what I wanted. I had to admit that Arasaka spared no expense to make people comfortable. Then again, it was also a way to assert a form of dominance by showing off their wealth. The tea alone was probably some unique brand they imported from Japan. Oh my God, it really is you, a familiar voice said from my side. Merida Oro Doom. I turned to see who had spoken to me, and my face lit up, and I leapt from the couch to barrel the woman over in a hug. Triana! Apart from the pointed ears, Triana looked exactly as she had in Thedas. I hugged her so tight she began to slap my shoulders. Merida! Merida! You're crushing me! Triana grunted. I released my hold on her and smiled at her with tears in my eyes. I'm so sorry. I can't believe you're here, and you look just like you did in Thedas. I've missed you so much. She laughed and stood back up and straightened out her clothes. I'm happy to see you too, but maybe we should take this to my office. Oh, right. Sorry, I said excitedly as she led me into a small, cramped, but still very stylish office. I sat down in a chair, grinning happily. Triana laughed as she took her seat. Just so you know, my name is Jessica now. Jessica? I repeated. I had to try to remember that. All right. Can I ask you how many other worlds you've been to since Thedas? She arched her brows. Other worlds? What do you mean? It's only been Thedas and this one. Why? Wait. Have you been to other worlds besides this one? I nodded and grinned. Fallout and Game of Thrones. What? Fallout? You're so lucky, Jessica gasped. I shrugged. I suppose so. It's so strange to go from world to world so many times while the rest of you seem to be doing it less often. You mean you've met with the others? She asked, curious about what I had been going through. Yeah, I nodded softly. Everyone except Farron. He's still in Thedas. Jessica was quiet for some time before she smiled softly. Let's talk about all of this later. Maybe over dinner? Best to stick to business in this building, if you know what I mean. I gave a firm nod. No problem. I guess you have my proposal? She smiled and pulled up my proposal on her screen. Yes. I see you want to purchase Rocky Ridge and the lot 213-A, but instead of purchasing it, you're proposing to gain it through paying off the owed property taxes. Arasaka doesn't have a vested interest in either property since the bottom fell out of the expansion push. But I doubt I could approve the loss of the property solely for the price of the arrears. I cleared my throat. You might have a problem then. Triana looked at me with slight paranoia. Why? Merida, what did you do? I transferred files to her computer and granted permission to view them. The city has already accepted payment for the arrears. Because of the amount of time that has gone by, the properties should have been foreclosed on by now. The city was purposely delaying the process, simply because it was Arasaka. Merida, please tell me you didn't, Jessica groaned as she scanned the documents. I paid the arrears and filed for an immediate sale motion, I admitted. Since the property technically belonged to me with the arrears paid, I argued that an immediate sale would allow the city to begin charging you property taxes and other utilities. Jessica sighed, and she pinched the bridge of her nose. So why did you even bother coming here in the first place if you already own the property? Because it's Arasaka, I said, as if that was enough of an explanation. Eventually, someone would get the paperwork, someone would insist on getting the property back, and I would be dragged into a drawn-out legal battle. I'd prefer to offer Arasaka something in return for the property. These tax write-offs? Jessica asked as she looked at them. More than that, I said. The write-offs for the land donation would allow Arasaka to recoup most of the money they sunk into Rocky Ridge. The proposal also includes plans for a waste treatment plant and a garbage collection service. Jessica hummed as she went over the proposal. I couldn't help but notice that she was about 10 years older than I was. She was in her early 20s, still the willowy woman she was back in Thedas, but looked so much more professional than I did. She was wearing an expensive suit and clearly had a few implants. I couldn't help but be a little jealous. The others always looked different in each world, or at least they looked normal. I was always the dwarf. I was. From Thedas. Always short, always stocky, always redhead with blue eyes. I'd love to look normal for once. You're proposing Arasaka improves their image by donating to the construction of the waste treatment plant and by providing jobs both in the construction and the garbage pickup service, Jessica mused. She smiled and tapped her screen. And I see that the Oradoom Corporation will provide the vehicles and infrastructure for the collection service, while Arasaka provides the manpower. I nodded. The contract for garbage collection from the city will pay Arasaka, so the company will still make a profit and doesn't have to go out of pocket. And you get tax write-offs for running the waste disposal plant, Jessica hummed with amusement. She looked at me with a knowing expression. So what do you actually gain from this, Merida? I know you. You're a good person. You'll do the work to improve lives, but you stand to benefit somehow. So what is it? I laughed and grinned. I'm sorry, but you won't be getting that out of me while we're in Arasaka Tower. So you do have something planned, she exclaimed. She leaned forward and smiled. How about this? I think the higher-ups will like this idea to improve the company's image even if it doesn't go anywhere, but I know you better than that. I have no doubt you'll actually make this work. Let me work my magic. Really? I asked excitedly. Thank you so much, Jessica. I'm buying whenever we go out. Jessica laughed. How about we go out tonight? I know a great place you'd absolutely love. I barked out a laugh. Wow, you jumped on that offer pretty quick, huh? Shut up, she snickered. I just want to spend time with you now that we've found each other again. We can catch up on everything that's happened since we last saw each other. What she meant was when she died in Thedas. I remembered that like it was yesterday. The heartache I went through was absolute torment. I smiled softly and nodded in agreement. Can you write down the address? We can meet there around 8. Jessica laughed and nodded. She stood and came around the desk to give me a hug. I'll send you the address. Just give me your contact code. I hugged her back and blushed. I don't have any implants yet, so I need you to write it down. She looked at me curiously. Wait, if you don't have any implants, then how did you transfer those documents to me? I worked my magic. I dodged the question. Oh, we are so talking about this, she replied, as she took a pen and quickly wrote down the address and handed it to me. I'll see you at 8. We said our goodbyes, and I spent the rest of the day exploring Night City. I had been in the city before, but I'd been spending more and more time in it, while doing all of the filing and preparations for the meeting with Arasaka. I made a point to stop by the place Jessica had given me the address to. It was a high-end restaurant called Tengoku. I looked the place up, and you either needed membership to get in, or you had to have someone who had a membership bring you in. It also had a pretty strict dress code, and I freaked. Luckily, I had hired Delamain to chauffeur me around the city, and he brought me to a store that had items in my unique size. When the time to meet Jessica came around, I'd gotten my hair done, bought some jewelry, and gotten changed for dinner. Jessica was always prompt, so I made sure to show up on time as well. She was already waving me down as I stepped out of my cab. She was wearing a slim black dress with gold designs flowing from the shoulders. I smiled as I walked up to her. You know, you could have said this place had a dress code, she laughed. Right. Like I needed to. I knew you'd figure it out. And look, you totally did. I snickered and shook my head. Giving me a little adventure for the day? Jessica shrugged playfully. Come on, let's get in. You're going to love this place. We approached the entrance, and a doorman held up a hand to ask us to wait. I watched as Jessica sent the man her digital membership card. The man looked down at me. You're +1? Jessica nodded. Yes. She's a new prospective partner of Arasaka. She seems a little young, the man said skeptically. She's standing right here, I said, slightly offended. You could speak to her while keeping that in mind. The man seemed to realize I was more mature than my size and age let on, and slipped back into a more professional demeanor. Ah, yes. Apologies, miss. May I ask how you have business with Arasaka? I smiled up at him. Well, most people know me as the creator of the Merida'sIsekaiAdventures series, but Arasaka and I are... You're the MIA creator? The doorman gasped. You're so young. I never would have guessed. Is it true? Jessica laughed and placed a hand on my shoulder. This is the real-life Merida Oradoom. Doesn't she look just like she did in year 12 of the series? Well, minus the medieval clothing, of course. The doorman and I looked at Jessica in surprise. The doorman because he realized it was true, and me because I hadn't realized that Jessica had seen the series. We were let in and escorted to a table near an elegant waterfall that was guided to a pool by carefully placed stones. We spent the next 2 hours going over what had happened in Thedas after Jessica died, my adventures in the worlds of Fallout and Game of Thrones, and what I'd been up to since coming to the world of Cyberpunk. The dinner was easily the best food I'd tasted in 2 lifetimes, cooked by master chefs that simply outclassed anyone that a post-apocalyptic or medieval world could possibly compare to. Before we were finished, Jessica called for a manager and introduced me to him, insisting that I be considered for membership. When the manager learned I was the creator of the MIA series, he put my name forward. Since I was too young to receive implants, he gave me a membership chip I could use to gain entry. All in all, the day was amazing. I met my best friend from Thedas after 2 lifetimes. Jessica was working to help me expand my efforts in the Badlands, and I was granted membership to an exclusive restaurant after enjoying a fantastic meal. Things were looking up.